Hey everyone, my name is Nevin Kay. I am the director of the Resist Trump campaign. And here at the Resist Trump campaign, we coach activists like yourself to lead lawful, nonviolent civil resistance to Trump and his enablers. In today's call, we're going to be doing Resistance School. Resistance School is our activist offering in which we engage critically with literature, art, media regarding nonviolent civil resistance. Our goal is a thriving democracy free from authoritarian control. Our methodology is lawful, nonviolent civil resistance to Trump and his enablers. Our principles are collaboration, integrity, nonpartisanship, professionalism, and hope. And in today's selection, which we are going to be exploring, how to save a constitutional democracy by Tom Ginsburg and Aziz Z. Huck. We will be evaluating, various aspects of our current constitution and particular scenarios in which it might be under significant stress. We consider this to be a quite timely book that was written just a couple of years ago and a very interesting way to evaluate our revered constitution. It also ties to our goal, which is a thriving democracy free from authoritarian control. All thriving democracies require constitutions, or at least in the modern age. And we believe that this book is in furtherance, will help us reach that goal more effectively. But until we have a new constitution, which some people may want or some people may not, we have the First Amendment to protect us here in the United States, which states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And I think that some people on this call may have some grievances. I've got a couple or a couple hundred or a couple thousand, a couple million. And then, we are also we're assembling peaceably, and we're also utilizing our freedom of speech. And that message is specifically for Pam Bondi and Donald Trump. All right, so we're going to do a little roadmap for today's conversation. We are going to be reviewing, I think it's liberal constitutional democracy and its alternatives. These correspond to the chapters in the text, these numbers. We've already read through the introduction. I think we're still in chapter one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're in chapter one. And we will be reading from the text together collectively, reflecting on it and doing breakout rooms in today's call, which happens every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In terms of catching up to where we've gotten today, we've got a lot of new folks and faces in the crowd. So I wanted to just kind of share the notes that we share on our event registration page, in which we kind of summarize the reading, and we actually create this as we go. So what have we learned so far in this book? Well, in its introduction, we learned that, in brief, liberal democracies, according to the authors, are at some risk, but that risk is, in their words, different from how it is commonly imagined, kind of in a mysterious take there. And then as far as the chapters go, the authors review basic terms in the first chapter, in which their central construct that they kind of start to analyze, that we've already begun analyzing, is liberal constitutional democracy. Then the book uses the next three chapters to evaluate these two mechanisms of democratic erosion or democratic reversion, I would say. One is the fast road, aka democratic collapse, which is in chapter 3. Second is the slow path, aka democratic erosion, which is in chapter 4. And then they look into a scenario in which hypothetical president tries to take the United States down one of the paths above, and then what would happen in these scholars' view from the perspective of the actual Constitution. Very apropos, I believe, to today's world. And then the authors intend to look into other aspects of constitutional design, which I think will be very interesting to explore. And that's the whole book. So as far as the first chapter goes, we heard about certain definitions of what a liberal constitutional democracy is. I'm just going to say what definitions of liberal. Thank you. We've got a definition from Schumpeter. We've got a definition from the Athenians, and then other scholars. I think that was actually a definition of democracy, not liberal constitutional democracy. So, according to these authors, there's three floor requirements for a democracy: free and fair elections, rights of speech and association, and the rule of law. And is not the only contemporary form of government as like a monarchy or a different type of competitive authoritarian environment or a fully authoritarian environment, maybe alternative government systems, according to this particular framework of evaluating a governmental, mechanism or way for people to express their will. The authors explored different elements of the definition liberal constitutional democracy, and really what kept coming up in that first chapter was these three institutional predicates of democracy. The idea was, again, if you have those three things, a democracy could emerge, and that it's like a system level effect that emerges when all the predicates are operating tolerably well. What that means to me anyway is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts when it comes to democracy. And if you have those parts, the free and fair elections, liberal rights of speech, assembly and association, and rule of law, you can have a strongly functioning democracy. However, according to the authors, this effect of the whole being greater than its parts will not emerge if any one of the three predicates fails completely. So if one of you, it's like a stool. Take away one leg, not good. Three-legged stool. So, as far as the U.S. goes, the authors acknowledge that the U.S. is imperfect with respect to all three institutional predicates, but also they say that perfection is not to be expected from most democracies because perfection isn't ideal and most things aren't ideal. But that the U.S. system qualifies at a basic level, and they also explore some alternatives to liberal constitutional democracy, like illiberal democracy, like you might find in Singapore, competitive authoritarianism, which many experts believe we are moving quickly towards or have already reached, authoritarianism, and absolute monarchy. And so we're going to be exploring this slide today, as well as, is liberal constitutional democracy worth defending? So what I'm going to do is jump into the chat and provide a question for you folks, which is the following: is liberal constitutional democracy worth defending? And I'm going to give you 10 minutes, break you up into two rooms. I will put SO in one, and I'll put Britt G in the other one, if that's okay. And I'll put you in one of the two as well. I'm going to create the rooms, and Britt and SO, and if you could do me a favor and please help with the discussion and facilitate it in a productive way, I would be very, very appreciative of that. Welcome back, everyone. I want to invite Anne or Britt on one side, probably Anne, because I think Britt's got a cough today, or SO on the other, to kind of reflect a little bit on the conversation. Let's go to SO first, if that's okay.
Yep. I think everybody was in agreement that a liberal constitutional democracy was worth protecting or defending. I think a couple of the themes that came through were that having been raised in a system that is liberal and values freedom, that liberal part is extremely important. And then, especially when it comes to that constitutional part, that it's a nation that's built around a certain set of norms, and when those norms start being broken, overstepped, it shows the fragility of the system as a whole. Is there
That's
anything
a really
else
interesting
anyone from my group would add? I guess, and that we're seeing a lot of issues with that at the moment.
And maybe in conclusion, that once we see these laws being broken, that we need to fix them.
Nice. Thank you. Let's jump over to Anne. Anne, would you like to share how the or reflect on the conversation.
Okay. Well, we all agreed, I hope, that a liberal constitutional democracy is worth defending. Steve was saying that we need to get more and more people involved and that people need to share their opinions. Um, through polling or some way so that these evil people will see that they are unpopular because these evil people only change when people don't like them. Steve, would you like to add anything to that? Matthew also put something in the chat, but it was right at the end, and I wasn't able to check what the chat said. So if Matthew would put something in the main chat as far as like maybe the same thing as what you said in the breakout room, then that would be great.
Feel free to do so, Matt. And thank you for that reflection and appreciate that. Matt,
Okay,
did you want to?
oh, okay.
Steve
I was gonna
wants to
say I'll
say.
pick up. I guess I took a little different, like I said, a little different view. But I think that's what we're about, right? What they respond to, and maybe unfortunately their response is invading Venezuela, but what they respond to is negative consequences. Now, I'm in New Jersey, and they're not expected to be liked in New Jersey. But in other states, when they start to see people not liking them, they react. And I think that's what we're about. And I think that's how we save our democracy. We all come out. And I did go out this afternoon. I went to Jersey City. It was really cold. I was there briefly. I turned around. I came home pretty quickly. But that's what we need to do. And that I think is how we save our democracy. Because when they don't like what they see, it's natural for Trump and for all his minion to do something about it. And I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Steve. Great. Okay, well, we got a little round of reflections after the conversation. Let us now jump into the text. So it looks like I've highlighted a little bit, but Anne, since we've already had the conversation, I thought it'd be nice to just start here, and then I'll try to be a little bit better about starting in the right place next time. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
Would you like to read?
sure.
Okay.
Okay. Is liberal constitutional democracy worth defending? We believe that liberal constitutional democracy is morally superior to the alternatives we have mapped out. This superiority flows, we think, most obviously from democracy's commitment, at least in theory, to a principle of political equality in which each citizen's voice counts to the same extent. It is sometimes assumed, although not universally believed, that
1 second. Let me just move things around. That
political equality means that democracy is more likely than other systems to adopt public policies that account for all citizens' interests, whereas its alternatives are more likely to yield policies that account for only some of those interests. Consistent with these virtues, democracy rests on a principle of simple respect for the capacity of ordinary men and women to engage in reasoned deliberation on public affairs, and a corresponding skepticism about our ability to identify ex ante an elite that is better able to govern. None of this is to say that democracies consistently adopt wise, humane, or moral policies. They don't. Nor do they always prevent elites from capturing and hoarding political power. They don't. But all else being equal, we think they are more likely to further these ends in more cases than their competitors. Of course, there are legitimate critiques of democracy in theory and as observed in practice. One focuses on performance. Any political system can be evaluated on both legitimacy and effectiveness, which are separate, if mutually reinforcing, dimensions. It is not hard to identify authoritarian regimes that outperform democracies in many ways, particularly economic growth. Consider the astounding.
Okay, 1 second. I'm going to actually pause us in an unusual place because we covered a lot of important ideas. Thank you so much, Anne, for the read so far. Um, that the authors did that I just wanted to just quickly review if it's okay. So what we heard, if I'm just going to finish typing, all else equal, better than alternatives. So I'm going to share with you the notes that we're going to be sharing publicly, and I'd just like to have a quick discussion about them. See if people got the same read. Okay, so you see that the breakout rooms have been populated a little bit. I think that you saw those notes already, but the author's perspective is a little bit different. They believe that LCD, which is, I guess, our new acronym for liberal constitutional democracy, is morally superior to other alternatives. I think is the approach that they, or excuse me, the opinion that they shared. And the reason why is because one of the reasons why is that it rests on a principle of simple respect for the capacity of ordinary men and women to engage in reasoned deliberation. And I believe there is also a call to equality. I'm going to go back and just check. I think equality was, yeah. The moral superiority, we think, most obviously from democracy's commitment or flows from a principle of, or from democracy's commitment, at least in theory, to a principle of political equality in which each citizen's voice counts to the same extent. Okay, that's just a beautiful sentence. Because of political equality. And you can also see that the authors believe that LCDs don't always adopt superior policies, nor do they prevent elites from capturing power. So they're not perfect, but all else being equal, LCDs are better than the alternatives. Okay. Any comments? Any comments on that?
No.
I don't agree at all.
Say more.
I have a unique experience. I grew up in a successful family. I'm married. We built a corporate successful life, divorced, and now I am more part of the lower. I mean, I certainly can feed myself, but I'm not part of the upper echelons that I used to live in. And I think moral superiority is a real problem for the people that have reached the pinnacle. I used to be in the pinnacle. I still think of myself as moral, but I'm not superior to anybody. But I sure as hell probably in retrospect believed, not consciously, but as I look at my life here and now and then, yeah, I was probably more of an elitist. I raised my kids. My ex-husband was very successful. It took a toll for sure, but the moral superiority is a problem for me. It's a significant problem because my family doesn't agree with me.
Let me interrupt for just a second
Sure.
to be sure we're talking about the same kind of moral superiority. So I think what the authors meant when they said that, and I may have rewritten it wrong. I think what they meant, if I'm not mistaken, is that liberal constitutional democracy, in their view, is morally superior to alternatives, its alternatives like competitive authoritarianism. Because what's unique about LCD is this commitment to political equality. It doesn't always. They've already said that it doesn't always evidence itself in, or they said that that. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Political equality is really a misnomer, because when you're white and you live in an upper class community and your kids are elitists, although I can teach my kids about morality and taking care of others and being kind-hearted and concerned about others, did my children walk away with the same feeling that those kids now have the same rights to college, the rights to this? I think there's an elitism that is involved in that, and maybe it might be my own bias, and I'm certainly happy to own that, but I don't think that the people that I live in Boston, I don't think the people that are on Melanie and Cass have the same political equality that I do as a white sub middle class American.
Okay, so I'm hearing. Thank you for the comment, Kathy. I'm hearing Kathy, kind of reflect a little bit on the fact that political equality doesn't really appear to be, actually implemented or realized in our democracy and where she lives or where what she's experienced. So thank you for that comment. Does anyone have a response or an additional comment to any of the other of the author's perspectives? Let's go to SO, please, and then we'll go to Anne, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, Kathy, just to respond to your point a little bit, I I'm thinking that kind of from the perspective of like a system where there is freedom, a given set of rules that apply to everyone, and people have the same power of the vote. I think that's the perspective the author may be coming from, and not necessarily talking about the socioeconomic circumstances and what the, like, I hate saying what the outcomes are, because that sounds like a lot of like that equity versus equality, but in terms of how a system can be set up compared to others, if that makes sense, and not an economic system either.
I agree with that 100%, and I respect your, a great clarification. I agree with it. I think the reality is that say, for example, the black people in America do not have the same abilities to vote that many people in major cities do. For example, I mean, as broad based.
Okay, so I'm going to actually just take the conversation in a slightly different direction.
Okay.
I think it's a really good perspective that Kathy is offering us. However, I will say that I think that the statement the author is making is different than the point Kathy is responding with. I think the authors are making a statement of comparison of LCD to its alternatives like authoritarianism, and it sounds like Kathy's critique of LCD is that, hey, LCD's implementation in America is not that great to begin with anyway. Is that fair, Kathy?
That's fair. Sure.
Okay, fair. Thank you. Let me go to anyone else have a comment that's maybe different than this particular debate?
I think you're
Britt.
right. Oops.
Yeah, my understanding of the way the authors are discussing moral superiority is, and why it's essential, is that it's about ethical conviction rather than looking down on others, thinking you are superior to others. More about committing to principles that would protect democracy. I could be wrong
Nice.
on that if anyone has feedback. Cough syrup worked quickly.
Good. Okay. Well, I guess the author's argument in this brief portion of the reading is that LCD is morally superior than its alternatives. It's not. It doesn't mean that like people who live in LCDs are morally superior. It only means that the system, out of the systems that we have to consider, such as LCD, illiberal democracy, competitive authoritarianism, which we are tumbling towards, it appears, full authoritarianism, and absolute monarchy. What they're saying is that compared to these alternatives, it is morally superior to these alternatives, right? That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And they're also saying that, they're also saying that they're not perfect, right? They don't always adopt superior policies, nor, to Kathy's point, nor do they prevent elites from capturing power. But they're saying, all else being equal, LCDs are better than the alternatives. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up the discussion on that point. And since I see no hands, I'm going to go back to the reading and invite another reader to begin reading from. Of course, there are legitimate critiques. Do we have another reader volunteer?
I can do it.
Okay.
Of course, there are legitimate critiques of democracy in theory and as observed in practice. One focuses on performance. Any political system can be evaluated on both legitimacy and effectiveness, which are separate, if mutually reinforcing, dimensions. It is not hard to identify authoritarian regimes that outperform democracies in many ways, particularly economic growth. Consider the astounding contrast between authoritarian China and democratic India in recent decades and ask, as if one could choose, whether it would be better to be born an average citizen in one country during the past generation. Setting aside political dissidents and ethnic minorities, it is apparent that the median citizen of China has seen her life transformed, while the median Indian remains impoverished. Of course, this example does not prove the general superiority of authoritarianism. While some dictatorships may do well, their variance is much higher. For every Lee Kuan Yew or Bismarck, there is a, I do not know how to say this, so I'm not going to attempt, Idi Amin. Setting aside the comparison of India and China, the predictable middling performances of democracies seem preferable, at least if one has any sense of risk aversion. Another critique of democracy focuses on the tight nexus observed between it and capitalism. An eloquent proponent of this argument is the German sociologist Wolfgang Streeck, who has published a sequence of closely argued articles and books in the wake of the 2008-9 financial crises, contending that global financial capitalism in its current form generates inequitable and destabilizing results that that ultimately undermine democracy. Streeck points to the plight of Greece within the European Union as an example of democratic polity where the effective policy setting authority of democratic institutions has been sapped entirely by the dynamic of global capital flows. Streeck surely has a point, but our incorporation of liberal ideas into the definition of democracy is a thin one, including only the individual liberal rights to speech and association. And so
Sorry.
is not, and so it's okay. So is not inherently tied to any particular economic growth. It is compatible with, but does not require redistributive policies of the kind that Streeck and others advocate, which we think can be established and successfully implemented within a democratic framework. Keep going. Properly,
Sorry.
no, you're fine.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes. Please keep going. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Properly conceptualized and measured with an appropriate skepticism, we think that liberal constitutional democracy is superior to the alternatives on display today. We also do not think that democracy collapses under the weight of its internal logical contradictions or its concessions to global capitalism. We recognize that there are many valid criticisms of democracy as it is actually institutionalized in particular countries, and we take up some form of them in later chapters. But while democracy may not always yield wise or decent policies, it does better than the next best option. No other system of government is built on the principles of equal dignity and civil respect. No other forms of government makes the airing of its own flaws so central a part of its intrinsic appeal. It is for these reasons that it is worth asking whether, as a form of government, it is at risk or on the decline.
Thank you for that read. Let's all give Britt a hand. How about that? If you can react if you can react.
If y'all could not, please.
Let's give
Way to
Britt a
go,
hand.
way to go.
RZ's
No,
giving
please.
you a hand.
That's just mean.
Thank you for the read, Britt. Okay. What I want to do right now is just kind of review what we just read. There was a lot of concepts there, so I think we read a few different paragraphs. So, one thing they said was there are legitimate critiques of democracy in theory as well as practice. One is about performance. So, democracies, don't always outperform other systems. See India and China. India being a democracy, or at least historically being a democracy since its independence, whereas China being more of a closer to, I guess, a totalitarian state or something in between, maybe authoritarian. And what they're saying is that China had this economic boom as an authoritarian state. India has been a robust democracy for 70 years or something, and it has been it has suffered from many ills, including poverty.
Capital K.
Also, one of the problems with democracies that they indicate are that there are some problematic ties to capitalism, or the tight nexus observed between democracy and capitalism. And I think there's some comments there as well that we heard about. And then finally, they say that despite those things, democracy is still the next, or it does better than the next best option. So similarly to what we read before, still does better than the next best option. And also another argument they say is that it's again they re-stress equal dignity and respect. And then they finally say that capable of examining itself and its flaws. Just kind of putting together some notes that I'm going to present to you guys in a second. Okay. Here we go. So here we go, right? Their perspective is that democracies, again, you can see on the slide. Okay, so let's return to the conversation. Let's just kind of open this up in plenary. Invite everyone to say, is liberal constitutional democracy, of which the authors have already said, the United States it's not a perfect one, but it is passable as a liberal constitutional democracy. Is liberal constitutional democracy worth defending? What do we think?
Yes. Always.
Absolutely.
Why?
I'll let whomever just spoke go first. I don't know if that was you, Andrea.
Just that, well, I mean, the way I was raised, I mean, I wouldn't want to live any other way. I wouldn't want to live with restrictions. I want the freedom of religion. I want the freedom of being able to move between states. I want the freedom of body autonomy. I mean, all of that.
Thank you. That was really eloquently stated. Anyone else have a perspective on that?
The alternatives are all worse.
I also think that democracies place restraints on power rather than amplifying it, ideally. And
it
plus,
sounds like that's important to you.
Yeah, yes, it is.
You stated a fact, but you didn't necessarily state why the fact was important. But okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Well, yes, the alternative is not desirable to me, at least.
Got it. All right. Nice, guys. That was an interesting conversation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap the recording and then transition to a continuance of this call. I'm just going to refresh everyone because I think it's a decent stopping place to stop the recording, so we can have a little debrief. So again, guys, this is the Resist Trump campaign. We coach activists to lead lawful, nonviolent civil resistance to Trump and his enablers. We welcome you to join our resistance school, which takes place on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday night, and it's on Zoom and it's free. If you check our website out at resisttrump.us, you can just scroll on down to attend a virtual community event where you will be taken to a link where you can register for this Zoom-based conversation. We welcome you to visit our website and consider giving a small donation or a big donation to our crowdfund if you would like to. If you go to our crowdfund, you will see that we are raising money for the second quarter, and we are excited to be at 6 gifts. We have a $50,000 goal, and you could be our 7th donor. So we welcome you to consider that. That money will go towards staff expenses, technology expenses, and professional services expenses primarily. We are a startup nonprofit corporation, or excuse me, a startup nonprofit campaign that is housed within the Human Liberty Project, a nonprofit corporation. Also, we recommend you check out our orientation, which takes place on Sunday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can learn more about us by reading our orientation guide on our website. We have a online community on Discord. We encourage you to join. We have a free core training course called How to Become a Leader in the Trump Resistance that is free, and it can accommodate a large number of learners. We encourage you to check it out. You can join an orientation call, as I mentioned, and then you can check out some other opportunities to get even more engaged, like hosting a local get-together or volunteering remotely with this campaign. So thanks again, everyone, and have a good, and again, I'm just speaking to the recording now. Have a great something, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.